Hi everyone and welcome to this week's dev blog, which is a further update on Murat. Now, there's going to be a change of plans again because of the issues that towed weapons have been causing. As a result, we are getting Murat sooner than expected, but without the towed weapons. So, Eugen's exact statement on this is, you know the drill, game development is at times waylaid by delays and reschedules, such is the way of life. In Murat's case, we've had issues getting the towed weapon systems to work. So to speed things up, Murat will be released without them, while they take the time to iron out the kinks instead. Now, ATGM crewed units will make their official debut in Murat, even though it was originally planned for Lanners, the milestone update planned for after Murat, which is obviously delayed as well. Therefore, be ready for the 2nd Panzer Grenadiers and the 4th MSD, as well as some Royal Air Force and even Belgian units. And Murat will therefore be coming in very short order, likely early next week rather than today, as they don't patch on a Friday. They go on to say that the plan after that is that weapons such as howitzers and gun pieces will launch soon after Murat. And there is more. Another feature that they are delivering in advance is the correct BTR-60 model, which was initially set to ship after Murat but has been made ready early. Now, you say early guys, but Murat's already very late, so technically it's probably on time. That's enough of me winding up Eugen. Let's move on to having a look at the new units coming with Murat. So, we will be taking a look at the crew-served weapon systems and then the towed weapons that will be coming after Murat. So, much as we talked about last week, we're getting a little bit more detail here on the various weapon systems that they are going to add to the game. So the first up are the Milan 1 and the Milan 2 ATGMs, the French-German, but clearly more French, Eugen say, because they are a French company after all. The Missile d'Infanterie Lega Antichar, or Milan system, was designed in the 60s and introduced into operational service in the early 70s. Fast forward to Afghanistan's war in the 80s, and while everybody remembers the Stinger Manpad as the potent opposer to Soviet air power, the Milan proved its worth in the Mujahideen's hands as a defeater of armoured columns. The Milan 2 saw major warhead improvements, including increased armour penetration. In general terms, the Milan system packs more punch than era-appropriate ATGM counterparts from other nations, but with a shorter range. In-game, the Milan 1 and Milan 2 will be found in both the West German divisions, and they will also be deployable by the 8th Infantry Division, courtesy of the attached German Jaeger Battalion. Over on the other side of the coin will be the 9K111 Faggot ATGM, meaning bassoon in Russian. It is a light Soviet ATGM system, similar in performance to that of the Milan 1 but with less penetration. Known in NATO parlance as the AT-4 Spigot, it entered service in 1970, eventually finding its way into the arsenals across the Warsaw Pact. In WARNO, all the Soviet divisions and the East German divisions will have access to this unit. Now, very much along the same lines as that, you will also get the 9M113 Konkurs ATGM. It was developed alongside the Faggot. The Konkurs look very visually similar, but pack a heavier punch and flies at a greater range compared to its lighter cousin. Introduced in 1974, it carries the NATO designation AT-5 Spandrel. In-game, the Konkurs can be deployed in all Soviet and East German divisions. Then we get on to the big boys. The BGM-71 ITO and TOW-2 ATGMs. First produced in the 1970s, the original TOW anti-tank guided missile system was followed up by enhanced ITO in the early 1980s. This variant was subsequently further improved by the TOW-2, deployed in the late 80s. This latest version was larger and more deadly than the comparable weapon systems, and the TOW-2 is one of the most powerful ATGMs save for some aeroplane-delivered ordnances, and in WARNO both TOW variants will be featured in the US divisions. Now we move on to the recoilless rifles, starting with the M40A1, and you'll remember this lovely picture of 6 of them on a tank chassis that I showed you last week. The recoilless rifle finds its origins in World War II, much like the rocket-propelled grenade. This weapon was designed to give infantry and light troops, for example paratroopers and mountain forces, an easily transportable ranged anti-tank gun. The recoilless rifle subsequently found its hour of glory in the early Cold War conflicts such as Korea, Indochina and Vietnam, before being replaced by more advanced ATGMs. The light and mobile M40A1 106mm recoilless rifle, with its large array of ammunition, retained a place in some units' table of organisation and equipment, and while it is mostly obsolete against the main battle tanks, the recoilless rifle is still a very versatile system, and it can be used as fire support, being able to fire both heat and HE rounds. And in WARNO, the M40A1 will be found in both German divisions as part of their Sicherungs battalions. And then on the Soviet side of the coin, we have the SPG-9 recoilless rifle. The Soviet 73mm SPG-9 was developed in the early 60s and is closely related to the Grom main gun fitted to the BMP-1. It shares ammunition with this weapon, lighter and less powerful than its American counterpart. The system's overall low weight and mobility made it perfect fit for the Warsaw Pact's airborne troops, which kept recoilless rifles in operation until the end of the Cold War. In WARNO, the SPG-9 is included with the Fallschirmjäger attached to the upcoming 4th MSD. Now, of course, that is not the end of the story. While Murat will not include these initially, they will be added shortly afterwards, so let's move on to the towed gun systems. First up is the D-30 122mm howitzer, the workhorse of the Soviet and Warsaw Pact divisional artillery since the 60s. The D-30 120mm howitzer was made to be reliable and robust. It could be found in almost all arsenals of the Warsaw Pact, either as a towed variant or the self-propelled version, the 2S1 Gozdika. Decked out in the latter unit in true Soviet fashion, it keeps some AT rounds for self-defense. In WARNO, the D-30 will be deployable in both Soviet divisions, as well as the upcoming 4th MSD, but not the 7th Panzer. The reason why is that the East German Division, as one of two armoured formations of the NVA, concentrated all the armies available to S1 Grozdika to make the divisional artillery entirely self-propelled. And alongside the D-30 will be the D-20, the 152mm howitzer. The towed D-20 was still widely used throughout the Warsaw Pact as an army-level heavy artillery battalion asset, cheaper to produce than self-propelled 2S7 Malka's gun of the same caliber. It had less range. In WARNO, the D-20 will provide artillery support for the Soviet 39th MSD. Moving away slightly from the artillery pieces, we will also be getting the MT-12 Rapira 100mm anti-tank gun. In an interesting turn of development, the MT-12 stayed relevant until the end of the Cold War, and in fact longer, actually still being in service until today. As of the 1970s modernization of the older 60s T-12 anti-tank gun, the MT-12 is cheap, mobile and accurate. The 100mm gun can quickly engage most APCs, IFVs and older generation main battle tanks. The unit might have more difficulty with advanced armoured units, however it's not entirely without teeth, as it can fire the Bastion ATGM shell. Eugen suggests you can think of the MT-12 as a more fragile but stealthier and cheaper towed version of the T-55 AM2B tank gun. The unit will be featured in both the Warsaw Pact rifle divisions, the Soviet 39th MSD and the upcoming 4th MSD. These formations, the anti-tank battalions, will rely on the anti-tank gun, at least in equal numbers compared to the ATGM-equipped vehicle carriers. Over on NATO's side, they will be getting the FH-1551 155mm howitzer. Also designated as the FH-70, it was used by many of the members of NATO, such as West Germany, the UK, Italy, the Netherlands, etc., etc. The howitzer was part of all Tiornis for all the Bundeswehr divisions, even with the armoured or mechanized serving alongside the M110A2 in the heavy artillery battalions. A much more modern artillery piece compared to the Soviet or even other NATO counterparts, the FH-1151 outranged most other 152 and 155mm guns, being on even terms with the NATO's M110A2 203mm range, though bested by the powerful Soviet 2S7. In WARNO, the unit can be deployable with both West German divisions. There will also be some mortar systems, the 120 PM43 and the 2S12 120mm mortars. Going back in time again with the PM43, being the very same Soviet weapon used in the last part of World War II and also featured in WARNO's cousin Steel Division 2. Infinitely reliable, this particular mortar soldiered on until the end of the Cold War. The 2S12 is a modern variant, made lighter and gaining firing range. The 120mm mortars have better rate of fire compared to howitzers. In-game, the 120 PM43 will be featured as the GRWFR M43 120mm in both East German divisions. The 2S12 is deployable in both Soviet divisions. Over on the other side, there will be the M30 4.2-inch mortars. The M30 was designed shortly after the Korean War and is forever associated with the Vietnam War. It is the same mortar that was once used by the M106A2, which can be dismounted and be fired outside the vehicle. After the end of the Cold War in 1991, the US Army finally came to its senses and adopted a 120mm metric mortar system to replace this unit. In-game, the M30 can be encountered in both US divisions. Unlike the Warsaw Pact mortars, the one card of the M30 will come at the expense of some self-propelled M106A2s. This represents the M30 being used as a dismounted unit. The game will also feature the Tampella 120mm mortars. They were designed and built as the Soltam M65 by Finland from 1953. It might be one of the neutral Nordic countries' most successful export products, and being an older design, the mortar features a shorter range than most other 120mm units. In Mortar, it will be featured in both the German divisions, just like the US M30 mortar. The Tampella 120mm will replace some of the self-propelled PZ Mortar 120mm units. Now, while we have had a lot of anti-ground stuff, we're now getting on to some anti-air. The MIM-23B IHawk anti-aircraft missiles. The MIM-23B IHawk is an improved version of the venerable MIM-23A Hawk SAM produced in the early 60s. It saw service in most NATO nations. This SAM unit can be regarded as a counterpart to the Warsaw Pact's Cub system, with both units being armed with 3 missiles of roughly comparable performance. The main difference is that the Soviet unit is self-propelled, while the American one, the IHawk, is fired from a towed trailer. In WARNO, the unit will be deployable by the 8th Infantry Division and the 2nd Panzer Grenadier Division. And that's everything for this week. Stay tuned obviously for next week, when hopefully we'll be getting Murat in pretty short order. Thanks everyone for watching. Please do like, share and subscribe. Remember to check out the casted game that is going up later. The previous game to that set is already up on the channel and was uploaded yesterday. But I'll see you all soon for some more WARNO.